Now let's move on to our second panel discussion for today. Now that's powered by China Daily and credit to Silicon Dragon. This session will explore the Asia's opportunity. Is Asia the world's new growth powerhouse? That's actually a question that a lot of us are wondering about. Now moderating this panel is Mr. Albert Yip. He's the chairman of Investment Committee ITFA. And joining the panel we have Mr. Jeffrey Paine, founding partner of Golden Gate Ventures. We have Ms. Soo Boon Koh, founder and managing partner of iGlobe Partners. We have Mr. Karim Hirji, SVP and Managing Director in Tech Ventures. Last but not least, we have Mr. Alan Fung. He's a partner of Asia of GreenTech Fund. Now, I will pass the floor to Albert. So, Albert, please.
Thank you, MC. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Cyberport Venture Capital Forum. Thank you for joining the China Daily Asia Leadership Forum. I'm Albert, the representative of IFTA and also the chairman, as well as CEO of Syndicate Capital. On my left, I have Mr. Alan Fung, partner of Asia GreenTech Fund, as well as the couple of the panelists coming in by video conferencing. Well, thank you for Jeffrey Paine, founding partners, Golden Gate Ventures, Mr. Soo Boon Koh, founder and managing partners, iGlobe Partners, Mr. Karim Hirji, SVP and managing partner in Tech Ventures. Thank you to all of you accepting our invites to be our panelists. I would like to start with Jeff. I like your caps, Jeff. All right. Jeff, I understand that you started and managed to found the institute in Singapore, where you are currently overseeing the growth in Southeast Asia and Japan. Since 2010, the founder institute in Singapore has graduated over 100 companies. Very, very impressive. I understand you also started in LA, which is really close to Silicon Valley. Now, here come my questions. Silicon Valley is always being seen as the breeding ground for unicorns in the past decades. Nowadays, Southeast Asia is said to be the racing ahead to become the next Silicon Valley of the regions, which I mean the APAC regions. So what do you think and how you see the tech startups ecosystem development trends in Asia 2021 and beyond? Jeff?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. I think Southeast Asia is undergoing the second the second run. I think the first run was in the early 2000s. Second run was somewhere from 2006-07 onwards. If you are asking me, are there more unicorns since 2006? The answer is yes. Are there more capital? The answer is yes. But the main reason is the market adoption is for digital products and services are growing, and the behavioral change is is upon us. So that's the real the real thing that's happening. So are more things being changed? More capital being looked at in Southeast Asia? Yes, a lot of money went to Singapore, Indonesia, and lately a bit more in Vietnam. But if you're asking me, is there real clear-cut innovation happening in Southeast Asia? I think we are still a little bit behind. There are some advances in Singapore and a little bit in Vietnam, but predominantly most ideas here or most companies here are copycat type ideas and derivative ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just the way the ecosystems are growing, the way it's advancing. You can say that similar in India in 2003 and 6. You can say that obviously in China from the late 90s. So are there more money? Yes. Are there more startups that are growing in value? Yes. And are there more technical people, more people interested in startups, more technical type founders growing in numbers? The answer is yes.
All right, thank you, Jeff. How do you see the GBA in China? Because well, GBA in China is growing fast too, and some people see that well as a Silicon Valley here in China. So what do you think?
Yeah, the Great Bay Area, I do understand when my family's from Dongguan, and I think there is two things. There is the mainland China phenomena, and then there is the Hong Kong phenomena. So I think I would say anything that's happening in the mainland has been doing so for probably 20 years already. And then what's been happening recently, GBA as well as Hong Kong, I think is still early on, it's still early stage. But I think there's definite interesting sort of prospects looking at it.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Let's see how it goes. Soo Boon, it's always great to have women leader on the panel. Well, personally speaking, from time to time, I always bet 50-50s. Well, it's good for you today to join us. So, Soo Boon, you found iGlobe in 1999 when the VC was experiencing the onset of globalizations. As a veteran in the global VC industry with specializations in technology investings, you have consistently achieved the top quartile fund return for investment and working alongside with some sizable VCs such as Sequoia Capital, Tencent, across Hong Kong Gem Board, NASDAQ, as well as the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Now, you might share some of your thoughts and insight with us. During this couple of years, well, the globe, the whole world, is significantly impacted by uncertainties of China-US relationships and COVID-19. So how is the pandemic and trade war that offer, do you think it offers great opportunities for Asia tech startups and investors? What do you think?
So let me comment a little bit about the trade war and the pandemic situation. So under the cloud of this China-US trade war, basically you see a couple of things happening. One is the major move of foreign MNCs moving their manufacturing operation essentially from from China to Southeast Asia. Yeah. And the biggest beneficiary, I would say, is Vietnam and Indonesia. So this is a big thing. Second thing, there's this, because of the regional trade, struggles, Japan, Korea, Japan, China. So, but I think Southeast Asia, fortunately, we are quite we don't quarrel with our neighbors, right? So that's a positive thing.
Right.
So in fact, regulatory environments are actually very encouraging local startup and also local governments, respective country, are very supportive of tech entrepreneur, right? Yeah. The other thing is also local consumers are shifting towards local brands and also avoiding less kind of expensive foreign brands, right? So this is the phenomena resulting of the trade war. So now everybody is like, I'm just, concerned about my people, the country and all that. The other thing is in the pandemic case, it actually accelerated the adoption of digital transformation across the board of all the traditional industry. Plus, it actually slowed down for foreign competition to enter into Asia market, ASEAN market. So that actually has give many of the, whether Singapore startup or Indonesian startup or Vietnamese startup, against foreign competition, because first also people cannot travel, right? Mm-hmm. So where are the opportunities that we see that actually is happening across the board, particularly in the ASEAN countries? Naturally, I think offline to online purchases actually accelerated during this lockdown. So obviously e-commerce and logistics grew substantially. Exactly. And of course the supply chain is broken in China and all places. And this is where Indonesia and the rest across the ASEAN countries actually start to grow. Another thing is the telehealth players establish its presence almost immediately. In the past, you have to get government to endorse you. Now government say, yeah, by necessity, we'll just give you approval for anything, everything that actually facilitate the distribution or, telemedicine platform. Another observation is, as you can see, the physical property market value actually collapsed within a couple of months. Literally, right? At least 1/3 of the wealth of the tycoons are gone. And I think that is not going to come back that quickly. Mm-hmm. We see the commercial malls activity are adversely compromised. Nobody can go So I think that is going to change how we do our shopping in future. Office space is half empty because of the, you have to work at home. And residential property normally is pretty stable. And that actually has prompted a new group of prop tech company coming up, like the co-working space. I mean, we have investment in the Great Room. Actually, they are not, many of the co-working space are not the WeWork. So they have actually very different business model. And I think the style is happening. As we can see also, the fintech industry, the banking industry is in the decline. That means the bankers also know, the traditional banks also know that over time, they may be firing 50% of their staff, but they would not know when. So they are already starting to plan to say that it's not a good idea to have one block of building with all your staff located in one place, with this COVID situation.
Right.
So people are starting to plan to say, should I put my front end, certain part of my front end, actually in different kind of co-working space, and then the back end do something very separately. So this pandemic situation has started people reset about how we are going to work in the future, and the future of works, actually that's very interesting.
Right.
Another kind of prop tech company which we have invested, which a company called Metapod, essentially what they do is they capture the virtual tours for residential and commercial property.
All right.
And in fact, in the US, they are actually closing deals. You don't need real estate agent. And, rental tenants, they don't really actually need to look at the actual property. They just feel comfortable to just sign off and complete the whole transaction.
All right. Well, thank you, Karim. I think you mentioned a couple of key things like, I totally agree with your observations because I feel the same ways too and see the same trend. You mentioned a couple of things like a supply chain and distributions, which I do think help me to lead to another questions to Karim. Karim, over your career at Intel, you have led leadership's roles in distributions, finance, and corporate R&D. So while you relocated back to Hong Kong last year, you're also responsible for AI, R&D, and leading your company to invest in startups that engage in, disruptive technology. So with the new normal, just like what Soo Boon mentioned, as well as the digital innovation across all sectors, what are the booming tech sectors, for example, fintech, just mentioned by Soo Boon, and the key tech enablers in Asia? What's the investment opportunities to offer us?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think it's important to kind of understand our context. As you mentioned, I've been in Asia now for 14 months, representing Intact, which is Canada's largest home, auto, and business insurer. And really, the investment lens that we look at is what's going to be disruptive, to our industry from a long-term perspective. And I think generally within the areas that we're looking to invest, COVID has definitely accelerated trends rather than create new trends. I think digital innovation, offline to online, et cetera, I think almost is table stakes at this point. But really what companies like us and others are thinking about is, how do you digitize the entire customer journey? And there's a lot of pain points there, I would say, for incumbents that can learn from startups or to actually partner with startups as well. I think from a sector perspective, when we take a look at investable opportunities in Asia that match up with our investment thesis, obviously, I think fintech is definitely at the core of what we're looking at. And I think when we think about fintech, it's a very broad category, including the protection of assets, managing finances, but also including the options for the underserved portion of the market, which also includes insurance and insurtech. I think we've learned that disrupting the entire value chain here is quite difficult. But if you can actually attack different points of the value chain, there is a lot of appetite, especially with what you've seen in the West around the public market receptivity for growth companies such as Lemonade and Root over the last 6 months as well. Mm-hmm. And I think Asia, quite honestly, from a fintech perspective, plays a very key role, and they're further ahead than what you see in the Western world in many respects. Mobility, I think, is one area that we're thinking about quite a bit. And I would say, in mobility, we were more focused on the sharing economy as well as autonomous vehicles, which are still quite interesting. But I think, the movement of goods, logistics, supply chain, smart cities, mass transit, all of these things in a post-COVID world for me is very interesting in terms of how Asia is approaching these angles and what we can learn out west as well. I think the third area I'd identify is the impact on micro and small businesses. And this, I think, for me is not just an Asian phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon, but I think what happens in Asia will be particularly interesting in terms of ascertaining credit or credit worthiness for micro or small businesses. And from an insurance perspective, how do you protect these businesses so that they can actually grow and develop? We've seen in the past with different economic downturns, the eventual boom in terms of new business growth in the small community. And I think from a fintech and innovation perspective, supporting these businesses is quite important.
Right.
I think, from an enabler perspective, again, maybe two areas to highlight in Asia. I think Asia clearly has a big advantage from a data perspective. And, the digital first nature of Asian consumers allows a whole host of innovative solutions to get created. So I think data and artificial intelligence is critical. And I think the distribution angle around, the high acquisition cost that many incumbents face in terms of acquiring customers and the competition with super apps in Asia is quite interesting. But how this all plays out from a B2B to C perspective, including embedded products, I think is quite interesting in the future as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Karim. Hi, Aaron. Sorry, I'm keeping you so long on the stage. Okay, you are an all-round financial expert with investment banking and corporate management background. And I understand your Asia GreenTech Fund invests in green energy as well as green technology as well in Asia in response to climate change. Well, nowadays everyone talk about climate change, and it leads to my questions, which is a hot questions too. Well, ESG investing in green finance have been seriously taken in North America and Europe during the past decades. Now it also becomes the niche of many investors as well, fund house in Asia. Do you think Asia can catch up with the pace? What do you think?
Actually, I think Asia, the green investing has been a hot topic, and I have been invited to join many impact investment, green investment forum in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. I think it's because due to policy as well as technology driven. In terms of policy, look at China. They have announced plan that the renewable energy as a percentage of total energy capacity to increase from 15% at the moment to more than double by 2035. Mm-hmm. It is a huge investment to be have in the next 15 years. And for example, in Malaysia, where we have investment as well, they also have a very aggressive plan that the renewable energy percentage of total energy mix to increase from 3% last year to 20% by 2025. Mm-hmm. Is even more aggressive than the China plan. So there are a lot of opportunities and capital required in terms of, for example, renewable energy. Yeah. And another area, for example, electric vehicles. China announced another initiative yesterday that new energy vehicles as a percentage of new vehicle sales. Last year, it was about 5.6%.
Yeah, I agree.
And they have a plan to increase this to 20% by 2025.
Wonderful.
It's a massive number, and we are talking about the electric vehicles fleet in China to reach 18 million by 2029. But the number has to be revised now because of the new initiative, a lot of investment required, and also government policy to support this initiative.
Right, right.
And green financing, for example, green bonds. Mm-hmm. China has already got their own green bond standard back to 2015. They tried to merge because at that point of time, that policy requirements actually set up by two organizations, PBOC and NDRC. They are going to merge because it is not 100% reconciled to the international standard, but they are going to merge it. If we look at the number, green bond size last year in China, we are talking about $57 billion US.
Okay, all right.
That is the policy front. If we're talking about the technology improvement, that help the green development. Look at solar panels. 10 years ago, if without government subsidies, it's not profitable. But now, because the solar panel prices have been decreasing in the last 10 years, now it's profitable even without subsidies.
Right.
And that helps the whole industry. We have big data, so that's why we have been seeing a lot of, for example, agri-tech companies using big data. That we cannot imagine maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, I see a lot of government is providing support, not only in China, not only Asian governments supporting the new energy. So for example, from Middle East, where they are greatly involved in traditional oil business, now shifting into the new energy too. All right. Well, I have a couple of questions, which is quite generic, that I would like to invite some of the comments and insights from the panelists here. Now, Asia has considered during the past decade, has considered as a driving engine for the global economic and growth in the past decade. Is it still the case, and how Asia will stand out or having competitive edge and lead the race in the new venture landscape? So, Soo Boon, do you want to share some of your insights with us? How do you see Asia in the coming decade? Is it still the case that we stand out as having the competitive edge in leading the race? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think the past 10, 15 years, we saw the rise of China. And then now we are seeing the catching up of ASEAN. I was telling my Japanese friend, they have kind of gone to sleep for the last 30 years, right? So now actually they've waken up. So if you look at even under the trade war and post-pandemic, China will continue to do well. First, they have 1.4 billion population. They have a very large consumer base. Today, they have armed themselves with very good technology. In fact, they are even more advanced than the rest of, US and Europe. The payment is all way in advance in the so-called fintech industry, right? All the, the WePay and Alipay, and also semiconductor industry. So what they have to do is just, to make sure that their population spend money, don't save money. So instead of export looking, now they actually be inward looking, and they actually can sustain that kind of growth. Whereas in the case of Japan and Korea, they are confronted with aging population for a while already. They have actually advanced technology as compared to ASEAN. So ASEAN become a natural hunting ground for them. And over the last 10, 15 years, if you observe, the Japanese, the automakers and all that, actually already in Southeast Asia. Now, as Jeffrey was talking about it just now, that with the influx of venture capital money and with the return of perhaps, technology people who has H1 visa, and then now maybe they don't feel so welcoming in the US. Now you increase the intensity of the talent coming here. And with a younger population in ASEAN, I think that is going to propel a very good bright spot for ASEAN and the Asia landscape.
Right. Thank you, Soo Boon. It sounds very promising and very positive from your perspective. Jeff, well, you just mentioned, right before you mentioned that in some of the Asian countries, well, the technology is still a copycat, and I think it's quite a little bit different from the viewpoint of Soo Boon, where she thinks that, well, the technology in Asia is becoming more advancing. So what do you think? Jeff, how do you see, are we still, well, talking about Asia, are we still the driving engine for the growth for the whole group from technology perspective? What do you think, Jeff?
Um, Asia, there are two types of Asia. There is the developed Asia and developing Asia. So I think developing Asia, the good news is the digital adoption is growing.
Right.
And then developed Asia, just like Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Singapore, there are more and more returnees. There are more and more better technology, more and more spin-outs. Right, the university research, big company engineers leaving big companies and starting startups. The stigma of starting your own company is becoming less and less, detrimental to your social kind of life or social status. So it's becoming a bit more trendy in some sense to start your own companies. So all this is going in the right direction, but we just have to understand a few things. One is the timing of every country's growth is different. The revenue potentials are also different. And then the different talent pools that are good in different things are also different in different countries. But it's on the right trend. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for segmenting Asia into developing as well as undeveloping, so provides more in-depth insight from these two perspectives. I have the last questions. Sorry, the time is overrun, but I have the last questions because most of our audience came from Hong Kong. And I would like to ask both Karim as well as Alan, what do you think about the Hong Kong startup potentials as well as opportunities in the Asian market and innovation ecosystems?
Yeah, I think, I've been here for 14 months and I've been, very happy with the support that I've gotten in Hong Kong, both with, you're seeing the innovation in organizations like the Science Park and Cyberport, as well as, the government really supporting innovation in the fintech and prop tech sector in particular. And I think, from a historical perspective, banking and prop tech has been, the key for Hong Kong. And I think we've been seeing some good effort in terms of artificial intelligence, which is, why we chose Hong Kong as our first location to open up our international lab. We've gone from 0 to 25 employees in the last 6 months. We've just gotten a second office space. We're probably one of the few international companies growing and developing in Hong Kong over the last 12 months. And I think I'm very optimistic about the future of Hong Kong, but I think we also need to think about how to make, STEM type businesses and research top of mind for kids as they're coming out of high school programs. How do we actually take the 4 of the top 100 universities to really double down on STEM and AI type research, and then having these folks actually work with top companies doing cutting edge research in AI. I think, we have a handful in Hong Kong, but we need to attract more businesses here. And I think the ecosystem will develop over time if we're all committed to actually investing in the future of Hong Kong. But we're very optimistic.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you for sharing an objective view based on, as you just relocate to Hong Kong, and thanks for your objective view. How about Alan? You have been here for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think about Hong Kong?
In Hong Kong, we have seen a lot of interesting opportunities in the last 12 months, both in Cyberport and other places. And also, I think we can look beyond a little bit in the Greater Bay Area, because if we look at Greater Bay Area, it is 5% of total population in China, but it contributes 11% of the GDP. And there are very good companies in the Greater Bay Area. If we look at unicorns, there are 43 new unicorns in the Bay Area end of last year, value $1.1 trillion. And I have seen some recently. For example, in Huizhou, we have looked at the agri-tech company, hydroponics, as well as using big data for analyzing when to use more nutrition and also the spectrum. And in Zhongshan, we look at another opportunity. It started off as a prepaid card company, but because of the 1 million members they have, they leverage off that 1 million members and expand into online shopping, online games.
Yeah.
So there are many opportunities in the area as well that we can look at.
Well, wonderful, Alan. Well, I cannot cover so many information as well as valuable comments from all the speakers over here. All of them are very addressing the questions that are raised today. And thank you to Anne for the last part you mentioned about GBA, because it's something that I want to contain here, but because of time limits, I cannot, to overrun of these sessions. So thank you to all the panelists here, as well as to all the audience here. I hand back the time to the MC. Thank you.